Welcome, everybody, to this week's edition of the Liberty First Foundation Roundtable. With me tonight, I've got Jan Rains. She's on injured reserve. She had a little mishap, but I'll let her explain what happened there here in just a little bit. We've also got Dal Grimm. Frank, unfortunately, will not be joining us tonight. He's got other obligations that he must tend to tonight. And Michael Vaz is running a little late, but he will be here shortly. I'm Mike Marshall. I'm one of the co-founders of the Liberty First Foundation. Please do us a favor. Help us get the word out. Like, share, comment, and help us spread the word. Okay, we're going to talk about a lot of things about what's going on in the United States today and what we think about that. And some of the things that we think this is leading us towards, and what we need to do to get back to our constitutional base. So again, help us spread the word by liking, sharing, commenting, and do us a favor right now. We're live, so spread the word. Okay, guys, we've got quite a bit to go over this week. Jan, why don't you start us off with why you're on injured reserve?
My dog was out in the yard the other day with me while I was doing yard work, and we have a dog run that she's on a leash. It's 100 foot, and she's cabled to that. Well, she decided to start doing her zoomies, and instead of running to my left, she ran to my right. So I had to jump over her leash, and my foot went into a hole.
Oh, man.
Luckily, nothing's fractured, but I stretched the ligaments and tendons in the foot, so I can't go outside for a week.
Owie.
Do you have it wrapped?
Yeah. The doctor wrapped it, and she gave me one of those soft casts to use.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but I've injured this ankle so many times with playing sports when I was younger, and because I'm pigeon-toed, I have weak ankles anyway.
Yeah.
So, not something new for me, but it's a pain when it happens.
I would say it's a pain in the ass, but it's the wrong body part.
Well, that too, though.
No, it could be a pain in somebody else's ass.
Yeah,
That's true.
Yeah, my dog, because now she's upset we can't go outside every day.
You get a little bell and then ring it whenever you want something. I can't reach this. Ding-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling.
Yeah. But she cracks me up, though, because going up and down the stairs, if I'm going down the stairs, she waits at the top step until I get almost all the way down, and then she comes down.
Oh,
or going up and down, she'll like take one or two steps, and then she'll stop and wait for me, and she'll take one or two steps and stop and wait for me. So that's
finally, Michael Vasquez has joined us, the dragon of the 5 boroughs, New York's most celebrated, or actually maybe most despised, political commentator.
Probably the second more than the first. Sorry for the delay, folks. My dog, some people may know, my dog is 13 years old, and because he's so much older now, he's been having some problems with his liver. And so he's off schedule. And that's what made us a little bit late tonight. So I apologize for that.
No worries. Come here.
There he is.
Believe it or not, this is with he just got his hair cut yesterday. Everyone says, oh, he's such a puppy. No, that's 13 years old. This is 13.
That's a good looking 13 for a dog.
Yeah. I mean, I wish I could say I'm aging as well as he does.
Come here. Come on.
But yeah, so there's the reason why I was late, and he seems much happier now, so good for him.
At least it was the dog and not like the feds. He would have been much later.
Yeah.
Pups aren't wanting to get up here today, and they're a little big for me to grab a hold of them and have them laugh. So
yeah, but
I guess I'm gonna get us started, guys.
Yeah.
All right.
Play my moderator role.
Okay, what you got?
tonight.
What you got for the first topic there,
All
Jan?
right, the first thing we have is Jack Phillips, the Colorado baker who just went back to the Colorado Supreme Court. This man has been in fights for his life for the last 12 years. He won a major case in the United States Supreme Court. And basically what keeps happening is he'll have specific cakes that are ordered from the TQIA population. And when he says, well, I can't do that because of my religious beliefs, they sue him.
Mm-hmm.
And the latest incident was he was asked to bake a cake. He said, okay, the man has never told anybody within the gay community he would not bake a cake, whether it be a birthday cake or some, a graduation cake or something of that sort. It's when they become specific. And this case that went to the Colorado Supreme Court was a trans who went to him and said, I want a blue and pink cake. Now, I don't remember if the frosting was blue or pink and the cake was blue or pink. He said, okay. Well, then the person told him that it was in celebration of them being trans. And he said, I'm sorry, I can't bake that. So, and this isn't like the first or second time that this has happened to him in this amount of time. And I think it's important, me being part of that community, well, not really, but I am, that in this country, we have a right to our beliefs. Just because I don't believe in what you believe in, you shouldn't have the right to sue that person.
Now, is this question, is this the same baker that was initially charged or sued over the gay wedding cake? Is that this gentleman?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And honestly, businesses are private entities. Okay. And provided they are not actually discriminating against a certain group, then they have the right to refuse service. Okay, that is a basic right. Now, if that person, whether they're trans, gay, whatever, wanted to just come in and order a cake, which he actually agreed to bake this cake until he found out what it was for. So on that basis, that's not discrimination. That is him honoring his and exercising his freedom of religion. Okay. The fact that he had said, okay, and then turned around and said, I can't bake that because of what it represents, is something totally different. And that is actually not a discriminatory case. So I don't see them as having a suit.
Well, here's one of the things that always bugs me about this. And this is why they keep coming after the guy. They're after him because he's a symbol of resistance, because he has won, because he has gotten support. And therefore, they're going after him, not because of any other reason other than they have to beat the resistance. They have to cause him to submit. That's it. They're after him to submit to their will. Mm-hmm. They can care less about the cakes. Right. This is specifically an attack on him personally. They either break him or they make him submit to their will.
Right.
And that's authoritarian. We should call that for what it is. They're being authoritarian.
Yeah. Well, I don't think a lot of people realize that once he won the U.S. Supreme Court case, they sued him personally. This man has been fighting in court for 12 years on different cases now. And
Yeah.
and it's almost like they purposely go to him and say,
Oh, they
hey,
do.
this cake, and then he'll go, okay, and then they'll go, well, this is the reason I want the cake, and he'll go, oh, I can't. It's, oh, well, I'm suing you.
Yeah,
Well,
they are.
That's exactly why they're doing it, because it is a trap. It is authoritarian. These are the kind of tactics we saw during Kristallnacht.
And actually, they don't care if they win or lose. They are out to hurt him financially because of the legal fees.
Yeah, they want to break him or make him submit. Either one is good for them. They don't care which, because this isn't about anything. I mean, legitimately, if they really wanted to make their case, fantastic. Open up a bakery that specifically targets and cater towards the LGBTQ, put it right across the street from him, and try to put him out of business by competition.
Right.
That would be a way of making their status, their position heard, and say, we're better, we are more accepted by the community, by the public at large, because our competition beats you and you are obsolete. But they don't do that because they can't, because they will lose. They cannot compete with him because America doesn't support their radical ideology. And this is why they're trying to get the government to do something the government isn't built to do, which is to subvert the individual will. That's progressivism, is collectivism. It is their will. You always notice we have to accept their feelings. We have to change our lives and our beliefs and our way of thinking to match them. Why are they superior to us? Because they have a feeling. I have feelings too. You have feelings as well. Their feelings are not superior. I don't need their feelings. No one, if they don't want my feelings, why in the hell should I want theirs? It's only because they want power. This is all about power, the power to cause others to obey. This is authoritarian by definition, and they are being evil.
It is. Okay. And like I said, they don't care about the cakes. They don't care about who bakes them or any of that stuff. What they are literally trying to do, and they have targeted him, is they are trying to literally ruin this guy financially. Okay, if they can't do it because of a judgment, then they are going to do it through legal fees that he's going to have to pay to protect himself every time.
And given the group that it's coming from too, we also seen that if they can't rely on the courts to get what they want, then it moves into the realm of the criminal.
Yeah,
that's the other part. So they may just drive him from the neighborhood.
Right. And it is literally a Borg mentality.
It's not a Borg mentality. It's not a Borg mentality. This is 1930s Germany. This is fascism. This is, by definition, it's not sci-fi. It's not surreal. This is repeat of history. This is fascism and authoritarianism in its purest sense, under the umbrella of progressivism. Oh, look at the rainbows. Look at all the unicorns. Aren't we good people? Because that circle of Antifa think, oh, we're just great. That's their feelings in their echo chamber. And everyone else should be able to look at that and go, no, that's authoritarian. That is evil. And we should not support it. That doesn't mean you don't support LGB. That doesn't mean that you go out and do anything. It means that what those tactics, those specific political and personal tactics are evil. And that's the problem.
Okay.
Well, and I think the thing that gets me the most about it is that if this tactic was being used against an LGBTQIA plus business, they'd be thrown a fit.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. If you did this to a black business, a Hispanic business, to a woman's business, to LGB, all of a sudden they'd be screaming at the high heavens that this is discriminatory, this is evil, it's prejudicial, it's ist and phobe. But it's not because, well, they're special. No, they're not. They're not special. They're just Americans, and they have a preference that a small fraction of America has. Not to say even the LGB don't. The majority of the LGB don't agree with this. It's simple. You lost the case. Walk away.
Right.
It's not like there aren't other businesses. It's not like you can't open your own business and compete. This is America.
It's a private business.
Yeah.
It's a private business. Yeah, it's a private business, not a publicly tax-funded business. I mean, that's the other point, is that this guy is an individual. He has a private practice, it's a private transaction. So there is no societal beholden. He's not societally beholden to these people to provide that service because the taxpayer does not pay it.
Well, and that's the thing. Okay. And even a lot of our quote unquote anti-discrimination policies and so forth are very skewed, because the way I look at discrimination is, if you go to an area, let's say you go to a community and you are of a certain ethnic group. Okay. For me, for instance, if I'm white and I go to the middle of Harlem, and every place I go, I am told to leave because of my whiteness, then that is discrimination.
Well, a nice way to say it is the denial of services on the basis of an arbitrary reason.
If
Religion,
I'm denied
sex,
service
gender.
in one place, but I can go someplace else and get service, I don't see that as discrimination.
It isn't.
I see that as a business reserving its right to refuse service to anyone that it does not want to do business with.
Well, I try to tell people when I get in discussions on these topics, I try to tell people, do you remember when we were younger and we used to walk up to a restaurant, there was a sign in the window that says no shoes, no shirt, no service.
Yeah.
Right.
It's the business's right to put that sign up.
Well, there's a slight difference here in that, because we're talking about the basis being arbitrary, skin color, sexual preference, whatever arbitrary reason, doesn't matter what it is. But if every business is, if everywhere I go, I am denied on that basis, that is discrimination. So I have no opportunity. There is no alternative.
Yes.
But if I have an alternative, if that opportunity does exist in equal amount and quality, so I can go to another baker that can bake the same cake, I can go and get a car mechanic to fix my car, I can buy whatever widget, whatever I want from someone else in that same community, then I have not been discriminated. That business, I don't have to do business with them, but that's not discrimination. That's
right.
Selectivity.
And that's the point I was actually trying to make.
And that's a big difference between the two, which it's subtle. It is subtle, but it is immensely important, because you're not entitled to get whatever you want. The customer isn't always right. I have, as a businessman, a right to choose who I serve, who is my market. I don't have to sell to everyone. I can make toys just for boys. I can make dresses just for women. I can bake foods for whomever my clientele I choose to have. That's my market. You don't have to like it, then don't be my customer.
And the same holds true with employment too.
Yeah.
Okay. A business that is looking for an employee shouldn't have to worry about getting sued because they decided to pick one person over another, and they happen to be from different cultures.
I think the biggest problem is that the words that are being used. Like when human beings are discriminatory by nature, it's our use of discrimination that allows us to determine who we associate with. And because we're a society of freedom of association, we use that ability to be able to say, you know, the person that's coming to me is not coming to me in good faith. I don't think I want to deal with them. And so you in that way you are discriminating on the basis that they're not transacting in good faith. But that same word is a captured word that has been placed in the legal system and means something entirely different.
Well,
and it's been placed squarely over top of, if you're discriminating, it means that you are discriminating against a particular group based on arbitrary or immutable characteristics.
Mm-hmm. And discriminating didn't used to be a bad word. Discriminating actually meant somebody was wise
or shrewd. Yeah.
Right.
Well, the key is the definition changes. They keep changing the definition to fit whatever narrative they want it to fit. And then you have to accept that new narrative. And then, I mean, it's racist. Everything is racist now. Everything is a hate crime now. Everything is discriminatory now.
Well, everything has to be. It has to be. If you are looking for it, then everything must be. If that is the lens you look at the world upon, then everything is, because everything you do is discriminatory, because we discriminate between what food we're going to eat, what we're going to drink, where we're going to go and eat, what friends that we have, the people we talk to, the things that we say. You are constantly in your life at every waking moment discriminating between actions and thoughts and activities all the time. That's normal, because you have choices. Discrimination is choice. But here's when that choice is limited.
But here's the other thing.
Well, go ahead.
Okay. And this will come right out of their mouths. If me being a white straight male, I can't be discriminated against.
Well, that's stupid, because again, that's a perversion of the definition.
I totally agree with you, but that is their basis.
I know they say that you can't be racist against white people. That's a lie. That black people can't be racist. That's a lie. And that's very America-centric, by the way. Go to France and ask people if people from Africa can be racist or not. Go to Africa and ask different countries within Africa if black people can be racist. You'll get an entirely different answer. It's ignorant. It is ignorant, and it is political, because it is United States. It's U.S.-centric, and it is based in U.S. politics, in particular race politics, that are biased towards both a political organization and a political ideology. This is all about power for a specific group of politicians and political ideology. It has nothing to do with the reality of the world. It has nothing to do how human beings interact. This is, again, it's oppression. This is authoritarian.
And this is going to lead to our next subject, which is IVF for gay men.
Oh, God. Yeah, that one got me.
What?
Yeah. Oh, you didn't hear about this, Dal?
No, Mike showed. I saw the pre-show, and I'm like, what? What? What is this?
No, it's real.
An oxymoron here.
No, I got to put it on the screen. So, people, you didn't think this was real, but New York City, the New York City Council is fighting. They want to use your tax dollars. That's city, state, and federal. So anywhere in America, they want you to pay for gay men, not just men, gay men, to have in vitro fertilization, IVF, in vitro fertilization. In other words, to take a woman's egg and to insert it into the womb of a gay man so that he can be pregnant. So
Now,
this is absolutely stupid. There is a lawsuit about this right now.
where exactly is the womb located on a gay man?
It doesn't. There isn't one.
There's
don't
no
have a
such
uterus.
thing as there's no such thing as a man who can get pregnant.
No, there is not. Men cannot get pregnant. I don't care what anyone else likes to say. Men cannot. You do genetically. You cannot be pregnant as a man, period. You can be trans, whatever you want to be. Men genetically cannot get pregnant. And therefore, this is not only is this a waste of money, but this is purely, and even if they win the lawsuit, it is purely an act of politics, of oppression. Again, this is authoritarian. It is merely to make people submit. If you bow down and say, okay, we will pay for gay men to have eggs, women's eggs, put into their uterus that doesn't exist, then you have just admitted that you will bow down to the will of the progressive left. This is evil. It is stupid. It is wasteful. It is evil.
Not that it should continue. Not that it should continue in any form, but the only way that this would actually work from a biological sense is if it's a woman, a biological woman that hasn't had the downstairs surgery yet and wants to get pregnant. That's the only way that it would work.
Okay, but
you have to understand. You are 100% correct, but you have to understand the left's terminology. If a woman has had top surgery, is going through her hormone replacement therapy, doing her treatments with testosterone, growing her beard. Well, now she's a man, so she can get pregnant as a man.
Good for her, but that doesn't mean it needs to be publicly funded.
Well, again, you're leaving out. See, now you're talking about trans men, which isn't the point of the lawsuit. As I just showed you, that's not the lawsuit. This is about gay men. This is biological gay men. But even if you wanted to say this is a trans man, okay, who's gay, which means male sex. Where is this egg coming from? Where's this pregnancy coming from? That's not an attribute of being a male genetically. That's just it doesn't fit. At no point does this make sense unless you are trying to oppress people. And this is a means by which to remind people you must obey. It doesn't matter how ridiculous it is purely about obey.
Here's something else on this. Okay. We've already determined that gay men definitely cannot. Okay.
Right.
So if that gay man actually identified as a trans woman and had completed the transitional surgery, they still cannot become pregnant, even with IVF.
Right. Trans women would never work. It again fails. So this doesn't make, when you're looking at the medical attributes, when we're looking at the science of this, it doesn't work. This is literally just because there is a loophole, that a gray area in the law in New York City and New York State. And so they're taking advantage of that to say, we have power. We have the power to waste money.
Well, here's the other side of the coin. And we already know how corrupt New York State and especially New York City is. This is literally a means for facilitating more corruption. This is a means for somebody to steal from the treasury, from the taxpayers.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure there's a doctor
exactly
out there.
What it is.
Well, I'm sure there's an entire medical industry waiting to be able to inject eggs into gay men for exorbitant amounts of money that's going to be paid for by the government. I'm sure, because it's free money. It's, Here's a syringe of saline. Say we did it. No one will know the difference because it makes no difference. Give me a check for thousands upon thousands of dollars. It is absolutely corrupt at every level. This is purely political. It is and this is why the mainstream media isn't covering it. They don't want to talk about this.
Now, does any of the reporting there talk about using those funds, because biologically it's impossible? Do they talk about diversion of those funds to a woman
Nope.
to carry to term, and then
No.
it goes to the gay man?
No, it's not about carrying to term. No. This isn't about surrogacy.
Okay, so it's not about surrogacy at all.
There are no
Yeah.
surrogates. No.
Yep.
This is about the gay man being injected with a woman's egg, paid for by the government. This is what the New York City Council is wasting time and money. We have crime. We have people being killed. We have illegal immigration that is destroying our infrastructure. We have people who are homeless. We have people who are suffering from mental illness. We have lots of problems. We have the infrastructure in New York City is falling apart. We have at least 3 million rats. Sanitation is a serious concern. This is New York City. These are the concerns, and they are wasting time and money rather than dealing with these issues that affect people's every single day and life. And rather than talk about that, even if they only spend 5 minutes on this, which they are spending more because there is a lawsuit that they have to divert the public's money to fight in a courtroom. So this is taking up taxpayer money and is taking up time for something that, even if you did it tomorrow, does not change the quality of life for anyone. It is an impossibility. It benefits no one, which is why this is all about politics. This is about control. This is about get your head down in the
one of
bed.
the issues that they should be addressing, rather than addressing this, is the housing shortage in New York City. Lack of affordable housing because of the rent control that they've put in place.
They just increased rent control, but by 5%. And that is a problem. And that would be any of the issues that we have just brought up are worthwhile and absolutely worth talking about and debating without question. This is useless. This issue, IVF for gay men. And why is this even an issue right now? Why are they doing it? Because, IVF is a national talking point because it's abortion, which is is the surrogate for abortion in the 2024 election. And this is how Democrats are trying to get. You're taking away my IVF. You're
and the thing is the legislation that I've seen on the abortion fronts don't mention IVF.
No, it's a completely separate issue. They have nothing to do with each other.
No, IVF and surrogacy and any of the, even in the state level legislation, that it's not tied to abortion at all. They're looking at abortion as a tool of medical murder. Really,
Well,
the states that are legislating against it are all looking at it from a platform of eugenics.
Yeah.
Well, IVF, let's clarify IVF for a second. So in vitro fertilization is an alternative means for women to get pregnant. That isn't about abortion, which is the ending of a life.
Correct.
That is the end of a fetus, a baby, that is ending their life. So we're talking about two opposite ends of the spectrum. One is someone trying to get pregnant. One is someone that is trying to stop being pregnant. Two different issues. In addition, the IVF laws, the reason why this is even an issue isn't about stopping people from being able to have IVF, in vitro fertilization. It's about the services. This all came from a lawsuit where a company failed to have proper security to protect the eggs that they held in the facility. They got sued for allowing someone to steal and damage other people's eggs, other people's property. That's what this lawsuit is about. And the law was that these facilities that store the eggs they by law are liable for damage to that person's property. You're holding it, you have to protect it. If you don't, you can be sued. That's what changed, and that's what that's all about. Totally different than abortion, and has nothing to do with gay men.
Here's the thing, okay, is the Senate was considering a bill that would block Medicaid access to any states that prevented access to IVF. Except there is not a single state in the United States that has any pending legislation or current legislation that blocks access to IVF.
No
state that has criminalized IVF in any way, shape, or form.
Again, the only thing that has come up in the courts about IVF is the company that is holding the eggs is liable for damage to those eggs, that property. That is the only thing. And the companies who are storing these eggs said, well, then we have to charge more to make sure we have proper security. That's on that private business. And people said, well, since they're going to raise their price, we can't afford it, then that's penalizing us. No, that's not the same thing. That's not the logic. That's on the company. That's about them protecting their liability for protecting the property. That has nothing to do with whether or not you have the right
economics. Okay, that is, if risk goes higher, prices go up.
Yes.
Period.
And that's the case. But do you see how they warp this? So you ask the average person, they think IVF is somehow connected to abortion, even though they're on opposite ends of the entire damn argument. And they think that someone in America is trying to start IVF, which there is no evidence of that anywhere. It's not happening. And somehow that's now connected to LGBT. Somehow that has to do with gay rights, which again, not connected to this in any way, shape, or form. But because the only thing people are seeing is the headlines and not stopping to say, wait a minute, this is impossible. And those two things are on opposite ends of this spectrum on the same issue. None of this is connected. None of this makes sense. This is about keep your head down. Don't ask a question. Just obey. We told you should be upset, re-elect us, and just shut up. That's what this is about. This is, again, it's authoritarian. This is political. This is about punishing you. How dare you ask a question? How dare you pay attention to the details? Of course, gay, biologically male, gay men obviously should be able to get IVF paid for by your taxes, even though it is useless and does nothing. It is a waste of time and money. But don't you ask a question, because you're an Islamophobe, because you dare to say, why are we wasting our time and our money on this?
I wonder if it's a wasting time and money on it because of the recent pushback in the last couple of months to gay couples using surrogacy to buy children for themselves. You guys notice that?
No, I haven't noticed that.
There was a slew in the last 3 or 4 months of gay couples that were going out, and they were broadcasting over social media that they had just bought themselves their child from a surrogate mother. So they basically found somebody to carry the child to term, and then it's immediately taken from the mother that carried it, and it's immediately given over to these couples. And the pushback on social media came in the form of, that's human trafficking.
Slavery. Yeah, it's absolutely slavery. From that description, that's slavery.
So I don't know. It just seems like it's awfully, not only is it an election talking point, but it also seems awfully convenient, since the previous couple of months has been filled with people arguing back and forth. Well, are you abusing surrogacy so that you can create a pool of basically trafficked children?
Well, that's a very interesting question, because that's talking about legalizing slavery. By the description you've given, that would be legalizing slavery. That's a very difficult. I don't think that's why we're seeing these cases now, though. I think it's because of the abortion issue.
This is a very touchy area too. Okay. Because I can actually see both ways. If you've got a family that, for whatever reason, can't have a child, and they turn to somebody to be a surrogate for their child, then does that have to be done? Does that surrogate not warrant some type of compensation for what they have to go through?
Well, I'm against the idea of surrogacy in the first place. So I'm not compelled by the argument because I believe that, well, there's a lot of reasons why. And those are my personal
Okay,
views.
but I can also see that as being a form of human bondage, so to speak.
Yes.
Where you're doing it as, or human trafficking, human bondage, whatever you want to call it. Because if you are going to be an absolutist on pro rights and that the child in the womb has rights, then they also have the right of not being sold.
You can't buy a human being. It is a violation of the 14th Amendment. It's a violation of 15th Amendment. It is, you're dehumanizing that baby from its inception.
Okay, so I can definitely see that argument for sure.
That's my argument. That's why I don't like surrogacy.
We're getting off topic from where we were. I understand, but we only got a limited amount of time.
Well, since we are on the topic of the Constitution, why don't we go ahead and do dolls?
Yeah, that's what I was going to do. That's what I was going to do.
Deal with 16.
So the next topic is going to be the 16th Amendment abolishment. And Dahl, why don't you tell us why you thought it was important for us to talk about this?
Okay, so lately in the news, we've seen a lot of stuff come out of the campaigning from specifically the Trump campaign about not taxing tips. Now, this is not a new idea. This is something that was brought up by Ron Paul earlier, and the idea is that your award of a tip is merit based and is a sort of direct transaction between you and the person providing the service that is above and beyond what would be considered a taxable income. So when that comes about, then you have to look at it like, well, if tips themselves are a award for merit, then your income itself is an award for merit and your labor. So in my view, the 16th Amendment, which was supposed to be a temporary way to raise money, right? It was never supposed to be a permanent way, but they made it an amendment. Itself is an unconstitutional amendment because it goes against the apportionment among the states. Like when the Constitution was formed and it was put in place that the federal government could place a tax upon the nation, it had to be an apportionment among the nation, and this is not happening. Everybody in the progressive tax, in the way the tax system works now, it is not equally proportioned. Do you see what I'm saying?
No,
So,
I agree. I agree with you on the apportionment part. I do have one challenge for you. Okay. Does not Article 5 of the Constitution set out the way that the Constitution may be changed?
It does.
Was the 16th Amendment officially ratified in accordance with Article 5?
Yes, it was, but it's
So that would mean that
highly suspect.
That the Constitution, suspect or not,
it was, yes, it was by the rules. It has been amended.
It has been changed. So that means that the Constitution was, by what we have right now in front of us, the Constitution was validly changed to add for a tax that was not apportioned based upon income, correct?
Correct.
That is what the 16th Amendment says. Okay, or pretty much. I mean, that's paraphrasing, but that's essentially what the 16th Amendment says.
It
Now,
says,
mind you, I don't agree with income taxes. I despise income taxes. I think that the 16th Amendment was a ruse.
Yeah.
I also don't think it was a thing that was put forth by the people, that it was done by the legislatures of the states, which is all that's needed for a constitutional amendment to carry through, is that 3/4 of the state legislatures ratify it. Okay, and they can ratify it by a simple majority. They don't even need a super majority to ratify an amendment. So that being said, I do think there was some very hinky stuff going on at the time the 16th Amendment was ratified. And I believe that it was unjustly pushed through. But that's about as far as I'm going to go with it. As far as on a historical basis and so forth, the evidence that we have available to us shows that 3/4 of the states did ratify the 16th Amendment, regardless of their means of ratification. They did ratify the 16th Amendment, and that it was passed by 2/3 of the House of Representatives and 2/3 of the Senate to be put forth to the states. So technically, it is a ratified amendment, and it is an alteration of the Constitution.
But hang on.
Fair enough.
But hang on, because I think we're getting away from it. And I know many libertarians and many people will like to go to say, well, the 16th Amendment isn't valid. We shouldn't be paying taxes at all. But the reality is we are paying taxes. What Trump has been putting forth, and the argument that's looking to be 2025 and beyond, is should we be able, or does the president have the right to waive taxes on a class of people, which would be service workers, individuals that live off of tips, individuals that receive tips? Can he waive off taxes that exist and waive them off?
Constitutionally, no.
Huh?
Constitutionally, he can't.
But that's what he's proposing, that he wants to push that forward, that day one, he's going to eliminate taxes on a class of people, which to me, that argument fails, and this can't be true. And I like Trump. I want Trump to win, but he can't do this through an executive order.
No,
because
he can't.
Executive orders do not, a president cannot pass an executive order on a class of people. That requires Congress. In other words, he would be making law. Since he can't make law, he can't do this. So his promise is destined to fail because he needs Congress to do that. He can't do it.
And it fails on another grounds too. The executive branch has no authority over taxes.
Right.
Well, that would be, and that goes back to Congress again. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's why Massey put out Ron Paul's bill again. In fact, I can't even remember what the name of the bill is.
It was from 2011. It was the tax-free something or other. But it's a 2011 bill by Ron Paul.
Correct.
But Thomas Massey is doing it the right way.
Right.
Congress. And
yes.
I'm all for going through Congress and doing that.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm all for going through now. Tariffs would be considered treaties. Also, tariffs are considered taxes. So again, the president wouldn't have any authority over tariffs either.
No, but the fact that he's signaling that he wants to see this happen gives the Congress, or would hopefully give the Congress, the motivation to try and pursue it. That's what I would want to see. I would want to see the legislature actually pursue this.
And that is something, is that the president does have the authority to suggest legislation,
Yeah,
to recommend legislation. He also has the authority to introduce, well, not necessarily introduce, but to present bills to members of Congress to be introduced in Congress.
essentially, he can set the priority. He can say these are the priorities, which is what essentially we get out of the State of the Union. That's essentially what we get when the president does his annual, well, basically his budget authorization, his offer to Congress is, here are the priorities where I want to spend the money. We see that every year. This isn't new. Now, if Trump was saying, this is what I want to emphasize, this is what I want to push as one of the first decisions of the next Congress under a Trump administration, fantastic. I'm all with it and I want to support him. But if he thinks that I don't think he thinks he can do this. I think this is politicking. This is just taking advantage of low information voters.
I believe that. I also believe that this is Trump putting out his agenda to members of the legislature saying, hey, I think this is an interesting idea. I think most people that work for tips are low income anyway. So why don't we exclude tips from income taxes?
I think that's where he's going with it. Of course, this is ripe for abuse, and you're going to hear from the left that they're, how can you do this? He's grabbing power. I don't think that's what he's intending to do.
No.
He's just wording it no worse than when we hear Bidenomics and we hear Joe Biden say the economy is fantastic. You just don't understand.
Well, it's no worse than Biden's literally saying, we're going to make the rich pay their fair share.
Yeah, which is...
I've seen articles come out since this was brought up that it's going to cost every household $5,000 more a year.
No, it won't.
Exactly, but they will throw anything and everything,
but even if it does,
the kitchen sink, to do anything and everything they can to get people not just to research into things, to, is this a good idea? Is this not a good idea? It's just, let's bash Trump.
But here's the thing. Even if it would cost more per household,
it won't.
We would have the money to pay for it because we wouldn't be paying the government to misspend it in taxes.
Well, that's not even it. The thing is, honestly now, and I don't mean to poo-poo what you're saying. I understand what you're saying, but we have to look at the ultimate reality here. The news media know that the average person in America is not going to take the time to do math. The average person in America, you mentioned numbers, they go brain dead. They're just sitting there. Amoebas would be able to pay more attention than the average American when you're talking about economics and you throw in numbers. As soon as you say numbers, people are done. And they know this. So they can say it's going to cost whatever they want, and people are just going to go blank and look at them and just nod their head like they think they understand what you're saying when you haven't said anything at all.
Well,
and they're taking advantage of it.
Yeah, and just like whenever I ask, and I will literally show them, whenever I ask, what is the rich's fair share? And ask them to give me a percentage of the total income tax revenue that's collected by the federal government, I can never get an answer.
You know what would be fun? Go out and ask the average person, ask these leftists, because it's always leftists who are pushing these things. It's never anyone else. Ask them very simply, okay, should we make sure that all rich people pay 40%? 40% of everything they make, we should tax them that. Say, oh, yeah. They'll say, yeah. How about we go as high as, how about 60%? We tap them 60%. Yeah. Already, 70% of all paid taxes, of everything that funds the government, 70% is paid by the top 1%. They're
No,
already paying.
You're wrong.
They're already paying more than what I guarantee you. The average person on the left has no clue. No clue. They don't realize 70% of everything paid for by the top 1%, 85% by the top 5%. It is the bottom 51% get refunds. They don't pay a damn thing in. They just take money out. It's the
Okay.
middle class and the upper
Here's
class that pay for
the
everything.
actual chart, Michael. Okay, because top 1% doesn't pay quite what you're saying, but they do pay a very significant part.
Are you going to the IRS or are you going to a different source?
This is taxfoundation.org.
Yeah, IRS. Last I checked with the IRS, although that was about 2 years ago, to be fair.
Okay. Now, this, if I'm not mistaken, this is 2021. The total income taxes paid, share of total income taxes paid by the top 1% was 45.8%. By the top 5%, it was 65.6%. By the top 10%, it was 75.8%. And the top 25% paid almost 90% of all tax revenue collected, income tax revenue collected by the federal government.
I've seen different number. That's their source, and I'll go with their source. I don't have a source in front of me. The sources
I've seen this not only here, but Taxpayers Union also has the same chart or a very similar chart.
IRS has a different chart. But again, let's go with this. Again, almost everything is being paid for disproportionately. You know, we're talking top 5%.
Well, and that's the other thing I was going to point out here. Okay, top 1%, their share of total adjusted gross income for the nation is only 26.3%. Yet they pay 45.8% of all income taxes paid. Top 5% is 42% of total adjusted gross income. And they pay 65.6%. And if you look at the bottom 50%, you've got a total adjusted gross income of 10.4%, and they only pay 2.3% of the total income taxes paid. Now, right there is where somebody's not paying their fair share.
No, it's because we have a progressive tax system. When what that means is not political. It means that it is prorated based on your income, and the more income you have, the more you're going to pay in taxes. That's what a progressive tax system is. You pay more if you make more, as opposed to a regressive, which would be basically the opposite, or if everyone paid the same. It would have impacted the lower incomes more.
And ideally, the way this should be is if everybody is paying their fair share, the bottom 50% of income earners being responsible for 10.4% of adjusted gross income should be paying 10.4% of the total income taxes that are paid.
Yeah, I get that. You're never going to see that pass. That'll never pass. No politician.
No, I know it won't.
I'd be interested to know. I'd be interested to know if in that top 50%, if that's where most of your small businesses are.
Yes.
That's exactly where they are.
Between the top 25 and top 50% are where most small businesses lie. And then
right, this top 50% is actually where the middle income is split basically between top 50 and the bottom 50.
So you're basically talking about like mom and pops and self-employed and
right.
Consultation manufacturers. All that is right there in that top 50%. That's us.
So upper middle class is top 50%.
Yeah, you're talking about the businesses with less than 50 employees. That's a small business. Yeah, and that would be in the top 50%. They're the middle class. Yeah,
that would well, what we would consider the middle class. I mean, now is almost the working poor.
Yes,
given with inflation and everything else, it's us. That's us. I mean, and you're gonna sit there and you're gonna argue that the top 1% are paying their fair share, but it's the government that's taxing the crap out of us, and they're misspending our money and sending it to foreign wars, and they're doing bullshit experiments on dogs. These people are crazy.
But it sounds good. Again, the moment you start mentioning numbers, the audience disappears. They lose their minds. They go completely blank. They have no idea. I've had speeches upon speeches publicly at colleges, and I've watched the students. I've watched the people in the auditorium. All their faces just go blank and dead, except for like 3 people. And they're just, and those are probably
this
all
famous study.
kids that are studying economy.
Yeah,
And everyone
cocaine
else is just
shrimp.
dead, gone.
Yeah, the famous cocaine shrimp on a treadmill study.
or the promiscuous pigeons on cocaine or meth
Mhm.
or whatever it was. No,
That is
and
another one, yeah.
I think a large reason for that is because people we've seen society develop from facts to feelings. If you could relate the math to a feeling and get people to connect with it, to break that cognitive dissonance, you'd get a lot more people applying pressure to make change, positive
did.
change.
Here's the other thing is people don't comprehend wealth versus income.
Right.
Okay,
That's
and they
very
don't
true.
understand that wealth can grow without somebody taking an income.
Yep.
And that's what they always like to point out is like Elon Musk's wealth grew so much this year, but did his income grow?
Easier way to put this. You may have a retirement account. I'll make it really easy for people to understand. Your retirement account is worth $1 million, but you go to work every day and you only make $30,000 a year. Wealth is the retirement account. Your income is the job you're doing every day. 2 entirely different things. Yeah, I've got stocks, bonds, I've got my investments. That's wealth.
And
And
unless
I'm
that
paying the groceries today, that's income.
and unless that money was taken out pre-tax, that's in your retirement account, you've already paid taxes on that money once.
Yeah.
No, you'll pay taxes on it several times. Several times.
Even simpler than that. If you own a house, that's your wealth.
Yeah.
Most people when they create wealth for themselves, the one thing that they sink the most money into is their home. So if you own property, if you own your house, that's your wealth. The job that you go to is your income.
Yeah.
And you're paying on both. You're paying taxes on both. So
Yeah.
you're getting double dipped every single year.
Now let's be straightforward on this. Okay. Your property taxes are local taxes. They aren't being taxed by the federal government. The wealth tax that's being proposed is a tax that's going to be put forth by the federal government, which means that your property tax will not only be a local tax, it will also be a federal tax.
And the federal government has no reason to tax my local property, which is a whole other. Now we're talking about a whole other realm of
Discussion,
problems.
right?
Yeah. That's
All right,
crazy.
we can go on and on and on this subject the rest of the night, guys, but I'm going to move us on.
Yep. Go ahead.
The next topic we're going to talk about is the Idaho farmers' water ban.
Yeah.
Bullshit. that's what it is.
Yeah, this is rather interesting. So, a farmer, an Idaho farmer, this week sounded the alarm over water restrictions for over 500,000 acres of farmland in Idaho. Okay, this farmland has literally already been planted prior to this curtailment that was put forth by the Idaho DWR. Okay. And essentially, the Idaho Department of Water Resources, and I will put this up on the screen here, came out with a curtailment order on March 31st. Or no. Okay, on May 30th, 2024. They came out with a curtailment. Okay. And basically what they were saying that there was going to be a shortage of groundwater. And as a result, they were going to have to curtail use of water resources for agricultural purposes. Now, the farmer that blew the whistle on this is literally saying that as of right now, the current groundwater is at the highest level it's ever been at.
Yeah,
And that there is no reason for this curtailment.
well, before, to clarify the curtailment, essentially what they're saying is the government is saying they're taking away the water from the people, water that is on their property that they have access to, that they use on a regular basis, and the government saying, no, we're taking it. That's essentially, at the most simple form, government's coming in and taking your water. Right?
Right.
That's
okay.
And the reason why the government is saying we have to take your water is so that they can protect you because there's not enough water. That's the argument from the government. We have to take your water because we have to protect everyone. Except the reality is there's as much water as there always has been. So the government's lying.
Well, there's another caveat to this story. Idaho also recently approved Jervis or Jervoy cobalt mining in the state of Idaho. And cobalt mining requires extreme amounts of water to be able to process the cobalt and copper ore that they are going to be getting from their mine.
Strip mines.
They're in-ground mines. They're not strip mines.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yes, it's literally, and it coincides all real nicely together because about the same time that announcement was made in the curtailment, an announcement was made that Jervis had secured a $15 million military contract for cobalt ore.
So it seems like the government is taking people's property, this case being water,
Right,
and giving it to a military contract to a crony for cobalt that the government wants, and they're taking it from the people.
right. And in the process are going to destroy 500,000 acres that have already been planted.
See, here's the problem. The only problem with this whole scenario, and I know people say, well, it's because of ecology. It's the only problem. This wasn't a law. The legislature did not do this. This is the government assuming the right to do all this. This wasn't something that was legislated. The public had to vote on it, to debate this in the halls with their representatives in Congress or even state legislature. This is the government assuming, kind of like what we see with the EPA, like we've seen with the ATF,
It's a state bureaucracy.
Yeah, they're just saying they have the power to do it, so they are. And there's your problem.
Mm-hmm.
Where all the climate activists are. They don't like drilling. They don't like pipelines. They don't like. Where are they for this cobalt mine?
Well, you need cobalt for the batteries for the EVs.
Wait a minute. I thought climate change was climate change, though.
No, climate change is only climate change when it isn't promoting the things that give more power to the left. So they don't care about the lithium mines throughout all of Africa. They don't care about the child labor throughout all of Africa. They don't care about the oil and gas that is used to ship the lithium and the heavy metals from Africa to the United States. They don't care about the poisoning of rivers because of refining the lithium. None of that matters. They want electric vehicles. They want these batteries that only last for 7 years and then are toxic and can't be disposed of. They only care about, well, they said they want electric vehicles and they want more power. And if you don't agree with them, then you're the bad guy. See, it's very, very specific. So,
Well, and I also think it shows even more so how they're trying to ruin our food supply more and more. I mean, how many acres did you say it was, Michael?
That I'd have to look up again. I don't remember exactly. It's not that big. The amount of water was like 74,100 foot acres of water that they are going to be short.
But of course, they're going after the farmland again because they want to destroy the food. They want us eating bugs.
Mm-hmm. Now, there's something else that is pretty important here as well. Has anybody ever heard of a cobalt bomb?
No.
A cobalt bomb literally makes a nuclear bomb look like a ladyfinger firecracker.
Really?
Yes.
what, a cobalt dirty bomb?
It's what they call a salted bomb.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, that's what we need, yeah.
And its fallout area and such is actually more devastating. Its initial explosion is more devastating than the most powerful nuclear bombs that we have now.
Yeah, but they're not new. People have known about cobalt bombs being highly destructive for, God, what was it? Ralph Baskey, who
But
did the
nobody's
cartoons.
currently making them.
Yeah, but it's something from the 1970s. That's a dirty bomb. A lot of people
It's
call it
more
a dirty
than a dirty bomb.
I understand, but a lot of people have referred to it as that. That's the common way of people talking about it. They're usually referring to one of two things, either a cobalt bomb or just dispersing radiation in the area. One of the two.
I think the more important connection to this is the fact that it's part of the additional Ukraine Supplemental Appropriations Act.
Mm-hmm.
So that 15 million is actually coming out of the money that they sent to Ukraine
Right.
for their defense.
That's
So
another thing.
That cobalt that's being mined is not going to be for local use. That's going to be used for either electronics or weapons manufacturing. That's going to continue to funnel material to the Ukraine for the continuation of the conflict there, using taxpayer money, mind you.
So so the people in Idaho are losing their water, which they have the rights to. They're part of their property rights to the government. So the government can dig up cobalt to give to the Ukraine as part of the 10-year guarantee of war that Joe Biden just signed on to.
Yeah. Yep. And it's
And
coming out of
when you put it together, that's what we come up with. That people are losing their rights in Idaho. They're losing their property in Idaho so that the government can fuel and fund a war of another nation in another part of the world for the next 10 years that no one in America said had any voice in voting on.
Yep, and it's all coming out of a 200-acre mining campus built on the plateau in the Salmon River Mountains.
Yeah, that's a problem. That's a problem for me. That's a big problem for me.
Yeah, and it's according to Jervois, which is the Australian mining company that's doing this mining. So it's a foreign company mining American resources for another foreign entity that's going to benefit from it, mind you, while my Idahoans sit bereft of water and access. And it's sitting on a reserve of about 4 million tons of ore with a cobalt concentration of about 0.5%, which is higher than the average cobalt ore grade of like 0.1%.
Well, you got that, and it's also got huge copper reserves in that same mine.
Yeah.
Because cobalt and copper tend to be together.
I mean, what they're hoping for is that this will not only help with the conflict in Ukraine, but that it will also create a supply for the United States that does not rely on China. So in a way, they're hoping that this will affect trade, like the markets with China, and it will cause them to lose their hold. But China has access to Africa, where much of the cobalt is already mined, and they already have the market forces buying from them. So this is not going to affect China the way they think it is.
No, it's not. And the thing is for the new battery technologies that are going on, cobalt's a part of it, but it's not a major component. It's actually a small piece of the puzzle. Right. When you're looking at the lithium and the other resources that are needed as well, most of those are under Chinese control right now.
Mm-hmm. Actually, North Korea is actually sitting on one of the largest mineral reserves for things like lithium, which is one of the reasons why the CCP does not like the idea of Russia having direct friendly relations with North Korea, because the CCP has basically been North Korea's babysitter for the last 30 years, 40 years.
Since the beginning.
Yeah.
You're talking about the Korean War.
But that really burns me, the fact that you signed this agreement for 10 years to continue. And this actually is a good segue, because one of the next topics that's probably coming up is about the Selective Service.
Yes.
Right? So here you have a guarantee that we're going to be funneling material and fiscal monies to a war in a foreign theater, and they're running out of people. The average age of the Ukrainian soldier that's now being sent to the front lines to fight in Russia is between the ages of 40 and 55. They don't have any young men anymore. The majority of them are either deserted or been shot or killed by their own side for deserting. So they're running out of people. And yet Biden thinks it's a great idea to have his administration back another 10 years of this. Who are they going to get to fight?
Well, we already know the answer to that, because we were told the answer by Macron. And I know now France is, before 2 weeks ago, when Europe voted to go center right, which we're hearing in the news media is often referred to as they became, far right. They're far right took over Europe. No, they're center right. But everyone in Europe was so far left that being center right, which is where America naturally is considered an extremist move. That's how far left Europe was. But in France, in particular, last year, Macron said that he wanted to abandon the United States and was trying to become more friendly and work more closely with the Chinese Communist government. That was last year, March.
Yeah.
This year, he also said, and he's trying to convince all of Europe to do this. This year, before the elections, he said he wanted to use NATO troops which are 75-80% US troops, to put troops on the ground into Ukraine. Now, the rest of Europe said no because, of course, America said no, but he never gave up on that. The only thing that might slow that down is because now France, due to their elections, are moving center right instead of progressive left with Macron. But we have 10 years. Every year, as we go on, as this war goes on, Europe is going to say again and again, oh, let's use NATO troops, which means US troops to fight in the Ukraine. This is a growing probability of US troop boots on the ground. And the second that US troops land a boot on the ground in the Ukraine, Russia will rightly say, that's the US. It's now a war of Russia versus America. And now we're into a regional war with Russia. This is happening. Biden has guaranteed it. It's going to happen within 10 years. Guaranteed. And the good news, women should be drafted.
Well, and that's the thing is, okay, what I put up here is for fiscal year 2025 National Defense Authorization Act. Okay, in here, and this is the executive summary. It actually says that women must be included. The U.S. military and Americans, men and women in uniform, must have the resources they need, blah, blah, blah. Modernizing for the future battlefield. Building of American combat. Okay.
Kind of the way I look at it is today's feminists want all this equality. Let them have the equality.
They want to be on the front lines. They want to be frontline troops. Fantastic. Frontline troops get drafted. Welcome to the draft, ladies. Have fun with that one. And I think when we start seeing what happens when the all-women units, what happens to them when they encounter an enemy in a war zone, which we have kind of seen happen. Remember Black Hawk Down? Remember what happened to some of those ladies? Yeah. Now scale that up by thousands upon thousands. It's not going to be pleasant. But this is what they want. So don't, either we have women who want to be in the military, who are frontline troops. That means they get drafted just like the men do. And if they don't want that, then you don't want to be part of the military. You want something else. You're asking for something else. If you don't want that equality, which is the equality to die, if you don't want that, then you don't want to be part of the military. You want something else. Be honest, say what it is. I mean, does that make sense to everyone?
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're actually, okay, if you are going to, like you said, push for equal rights and equal opportunities and equal treatment, then you are subjected to all things. Okay. That includes the draft. If they decide to reinstitute the draft or selective service, then women must be included. Okay, they are to be treated as equals to men, then they are equal to men and being called up for active service.
And we also have to point out, should point out that the selective service is a mandatory thing for men, has been for the longest time. Like when you turned 18, one of the first things that I was told is, hey, you need to go register with the selective service.
Registration's automatic now.
Yes.
You no longer have to register, it's automatic.
Yeah,
Well,
well, we
and
registered because I know in '86 I had to register.
Right.
yeah,
So did you, Mike?
yeah, we all
Well,
of
no, because I was actually in the military at the time.
there is a huge difference between being drafted and enlisting, definitely. But the the thing of it is that when I turned 18, my grandparents and my father, they were like, hey, this is something that you must do, not only because of law's sake, but because the fact that all of our men in our family have basically taken the oath to protect the Constitution and the country
Mhm.
and the people in it. You need to continue this. So for me, it was a familial thing. I understood that. My son doesn't get that opportunity to understand that. He's automatically drafted. Whatever happens in the next 10 years, he's automatically signed up and he gets to be part of that lottery, whether he understands it or not. And that's what we're looking at now with any future generation. And that's a win for the authoritarian government. Because if the authoritarians can send your children the next 2 generations or 3 generations to war, and most of them don't come home, anybody that had any energy for dissent is now gone. There's nothing to stop authoritarians from
Right.
abusing people at home.
And
Mhm.
it shows that
User.
it shows
Okay, you
that
said
to me it shows we haven't learned from the past, because Vietnam was, you were signed up, you had to go.
well, Vietnam, Korea, World War II, World War I, all had the draft.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
And there were those people of influence that managed to dodge it,
Mhm.
whether they like to say they dodged it or not. So there was differential enforcement when it came to the draft.
Right.
But the majority of people that were drafted ended up going.
Now, user says don't sign up for the draft, don't vote. Thing is
It's out of your hands now.
It is. Okay. It's all done by your social security number. It's automatic. When you are assigned your social security number, which is now a requirement at birth, okay, the parents have so many days to apply for the child's social security number after their birth. There is no circumventing it. You are registered, regardless.
I wonder what that means for the Amish. As far as I understand it, the
Religious
Amish are,
exemption.
yeah, is it?
Yeah, they have a religious exemption.
Okay.
Yes. And you can actually, if you are called up for service, you can claim that you are a conscientious objector.
Harder for some than others. The Amish get it.
But you have to prove that you are a conscientious objector.
Yeah.
Now, there was one individual,
Muhammad
and
Ali.
I actually just saw a movie on it not too long ago. He was actually drafted.
Muhammad Ali.
World War II. What's that?
Oh, I was thinking you were talking about Muhammad Ali in Vietnam. He did.
No.
And that's when he was using his name still as Cassius Clay.
But this gentleman was drafted. He did report, but he refused to carry a firearm.
He was a medic.
And he was a medic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a couple of cases of individuals like that. Marines have one as well.
Well, he was a Marine.
Yeah. I believe that's
Actually, no, he's Navy. He was a Marine. He was corpsman with Marines.
Working as the corpsman.
Right.
Now, which is medical. For people who don't know, corpsman is medical. He's the medical guy.
From what I
Marines don't
understand,
have
he won medals for saving 65 of the guys.
Yeah.
Like it was like 65 guys he managed to pull off wounded and unarmed.
Yeah.
Because he was under heavy fire at the time. And when people go, oh, what do you mean he's Marines, Navy? Marines don't have medics. We just fight. Marines fight. Navy heals us and transport us.
And technically, the Marines are a part of the Department of the Navy.
Kind of, sort of, yes.
Okay, so Navy takes care of our medical.
Yeah.
Marine Corps medical.
That's why you always see corpsmen or medics And when you see medics with Marines, they're always Navy. But that being said, the real core thing that gets me about this, one, I don't have a problem with the draft.
No.
I don't have a problem with the draft in the future. Could it be abused? Yes and no, because that's a double-edged sword. Because, yeah, you lose some of the people who might resist and who might be protesting. Yeah, and you get hardened, trained warriors who do come back home, and you don't want to piss them off? I don't think so. So, yeah, we've got so much power until those soldiers come back home. Now you have an actual army sitting around pissed off at you. Not a smart thing. So I think that balances itself out. The thing that gets me, though, is the part that women, these same women's groups, the same progressives that are telling us there is no difference between men and women, that women should be allowed to do everything men do, and that it is wrong, it is evil to not have women on the front lines in peacetime, are the ones who are saying that in wartime, women don't get to be on the front lines.
Right.
It's one, to me, it's, if you're fighting for this, and this is what you think is this is something worth fighting about, then you're fighting for it all. That means you get to die just like any other man does. You get drafted just like any man does. You still get this. If I get 4 weeks of draft training and thrown onto inland to fight, so do the women. You die just like everyone else does. You don't get preferential treatment at the last minute because you don't like it. It's all or none. Either you're part of the draft and you suffer just like everyone else does, or you're not the same. There is a difference in gender, and let's stop playing stupid games.
I can agree with that.
Yeah.
All right, next subject. Office of the U.S. Trustee versus Hammond's Ball, 2006.
Okay, so this is a rather interesting case. This was actually decided by the Supreme Court here not that long ago. And what makes it interesting is the fact that a couple of terms ago, in fact, 2 terms ago, the Supreme Court weighed in on a case called Siegel versus Fitzgerald. And at that time, it held that the statute violated the bankruptcy clause's uniformity requirement because it permitted different fees for Chapter 11 debtors depending upon the district where their case was filed. Essentially, what that means is that depending on where you filed for bankruptcy, it could be either more or less than it was in another area. So, like if you filed for bankruptcy in New York City, your Chapter 11 fees might be a lot more than if you filed in Frankfort, Kentucky, say. And that's what the problem was the fees across the nation were not all the same. And under the premise of that, essentially they were looking at it as if it was a direct tax in order to file for bankruptcy protection. And as we all know, based upon the Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, all direct taxes must be apportioned equally amongst the states. Okay, so as this being a tax, it must be equal across the states. Now, that being said, the case of United States Trustee versus John Q. Hammonds also came to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court had a different opinion than the one it held 2 sessions ago. And essentially what they said in this is if we follow the precedents set under Sigmund v. Fitzgerald, it would literally force the United States to refund the differences in the fees that were paid. And that would amount to $326 million that the taxpayer would be on the hook for. Now, when the bankruptcy fees was set up, that was supposed to be a self-funding deal. Okay. So in other words, when you filed for bankruptcy, the costs for filing for that bankruptcy was supposed to be self-sustaining. Okay. In other words, the fees amounted to what the government would need to put forth that bankruptcy. Okay. And it wasn't going to cost taxpayers any money. Well, because of that ruling 2 sessions ago, now the federal government is now on the hook, or could potentially be on the hook, for paying the difference between what the lower fees paid and what was paid via the higher fees. And that amount could be upwards of $326 million. And basically, the Supreme Court said in this, because basically what Hammonds did was, after Siegel v. Fitzgerald came out, John Hammonds filed against the United States trustee to receive a refund on the excess amount that he paid for his bankruptcy filing. And the Supreme Court basically said, well, sorry, go pound sand. You're not getting it. So essentially said, yeah, it's illegal to charge different fees in different parts of the country to file for bankruptcy, but we're not going to do anything about it, because if you did file at a higher fee rate than what somebody else filed at, you're just going to have to suffer.
Sounds like a state's issue to me. I don't see the problem.
Well, it's not a state issue. It's a federal issue, because the federal government constitutionally is in charge of bankruptcy.
Then, okay, then they need to have a congressional law stating here's the fee. Done.
Right. And that fee was supposed to be equal across states, except it wasn't. And that's where the problem was.
Do we have a law that says this is what it costs for a bankruptcy?
Yeah. And at each district, it's different, depending on where that bankruptcy is filed.
The law says that each district is different.
Yes.
So Congress failed.
Right.
Okay.
Are we surprised?
But if Congress goes back to what we were talking about earlier with the 16th Amendment. Congress wrote the law. The law is flawed, but they did write it, and no one objected to it. That's the law. Why argue about it after the fact? If it's not a state's issue,
well,
it should be.
The thing is somebody did object to it. Okay, and they objected to it 2 sessions ago in the Siegel v. Fitzgerald case.
Okay.
And that's when the Supreme Court held that the bankruptcy fee schedule was unconstitutional, because it was not equal across the nation.
Okay.
And now the Supreme Court is basically saying, well, yeah, it was an unconstitutional law and the fee should have been equal across the nation, but because they weren't, we're not going to hold the taxpayer accountable because of Congress's mistake.
Okay.
So that's what it amounts to. Okay, and essentially it is a catch-22 situation. Okay, because what we have here is we have an egregious law that was passed, deemed unconstitutional after it's already done a lot of damage. And then we've got when somebody tries to get reimbursed for the damage that occurred to them, we've got the court saying, well, yeah, you were harmed, but we're not going to do anything about it because that would put the U.S. on the hook for this much money.
Yeah. I see why I understand why Supreme Court did it, because the financial ramification would be devastating,
Right.
and that
But
would
again,
that would harm the economy and therefore harm the American people more so than moving forward.
But if they're going to hold a law as being unconstitutional and then turn around and say, well, there's nothing we can do about it, is that right?
You're asking, what's the greatest evil? And that's a tough question. Is it more wrong or more negative to harm the entire United States by putting the economic burden for the past grievance on everyone today and going forward, or to allow that grievance to exist and going forward to amend it so people in the future won't have this problem, just the people in the past? Or do we punish everyone now and in the future?
Okay, let's put it a different way. Let's take the bankruptcy out of it. Congress passes a tax.
Yeah.
On the people.
Okay.
Right? Or actually on a select group of people. Say a wealth tax. Right? And for 12 years, billionaires have to pay however much money in taxes. And then finally it rolls through the court system, and the Supreme Court then turns around and says, well, those taxes were unconstitutional. Congress didn't have any authority to do that because that's a direct tax.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and direct taxes must be apportioned through the states.
Uh-huh.
Don't those billionaires deserve compensation for the excess taxes that they paid for?
Same argument. It's the same argument, which is, okay, this could, again, the financial income of the United States.
You say, well, it's okay for Congress to do harm until it's caught and then overruled. And then because they've done harm, it has no repercussions.
No, the argument is what's going to have the greatest future harm. Punishing the United States for what it already did, or punishing or allowing those individuals who were wronged to suffer. Which one
But aren't we the government?
Supposed to be.
Okay.
And
so
again,
shouldn't we be held accountable for the way government acts?
How long? How much pain are we willing to? The question is, how much pain?
We're supposed to be the ones in charge of government. We're supposed to hold government in check.
And the average people don't want to suffer. They don't want pain. That's what this argument's about. It's about pain. How much?
And I don't care. Okay,
want?
because it's their fault that they allowed government.
I understand that, but that's not. I understand that's the principle, and you're being very principled. I understand you're being very principled, but I understand the argument. And again, this is a very odd case, and I've got mixed feelings on it. But I understand the argument is. It isn't about the principle. It's about the function. And the function is, how much pain do we inflict on America? Do we have the small group of people who are punished and pain and hurt and then move forward? Or do we hurt all of America because of that?
So user says those who pass bad laws should be punished. Okay. Who was responsible for putting the people in office that passed a bad law?
Ultimately, it's always the voter, and it comes back to the people. Still doesn't
Okay.
resolve the problem.
So essentially, we passed the law.
I understand that. Again, you're taking the principal position. That's not the argument I'm making. That's not the way I think that without looking at the comments and the dissent and such, they're looking at pain. They're not looking at principle. You're not wrong on principle. I understand the principle. The argument isn't about the principle. It's about pain. It's about the damage to the nation going forward.
Ideally, if our culture was different, ideally, people would recognize culturally that we are at fault for allowing the government to go as far as they did. So we would end up taking the pain. Well, then we would also be going back to those representatives that we sent with our trust that they were not going to abuse their authority for making the bad law and punish them for making that bad law. Without properly informing the public and taking advantage of the fact that people don't like pain.
Now, I want to
ideal.
Now I want to show you exactly how much pain this would actually be. 326 million. How many people are in the United States?
About 330 million.
Well, it doesn't matter.
It'd be $1
we have
per
7 trillion. We have 7 trillion in our budget. It's not enough money to worry about.
This mistake would be $1 a person.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's $1 a person. It's not enough. We have a $7 trillion, almost $8 trillion budget. 300 million isn't a number to worry about. That's not breaking the bank.
Okay. So I don't hold that premise. Okay. And I don't think the court should have made the ruling in the way that it did.
If the number
should have held up its earlier precedent.
Again, going back to what I was talking about, which is about the pain. The pain is not insurmountable for the nation. It's not put the nation at economic turmoil. Then yeah, you're right. It's not a question of principle at that. Well, it is a question of principle, but the principle should stand because the pain and suffering of the future is not applicable. So yeah, you're right. They should pay it.
Okay.
A little more inflation, but not significant.
Like I said, it's $1 a person.
No, inflation.
Less than $1 a person.
It winds up being far more than that because of inflation impact and several other factors, but mostly printing another 300 million on top of what we're already spending. It adds to the deficit. It adds to the interest rate. It adds to inflation. It actually winds up being more. Call it $5, $6. Doesn't matter. It's still not significant enough to make a difference.
But ultimately, like I've been trying to get at, and this is one of the problems that we have in this country, is the people aren't involved. And when people aren't involved, stuff like this forces people to get involved. When Congress makes a mistake because people weren't holding them accountable, and people have to pay for that mistake, then maybe they start waking up.
It would need to be a lot more money than $300 million. It has to be significant. You're talking $3 trillion. That's a number that people wake up to. That would have that would shake.
But regardless of what the amount is, okay, I still think that people should be on the hook for it. When our representatives make a mistake.
I understand. I understand it's a very principled position you're taking, which I respect, and I understand it completely. And in this case, given those numbers, I think you're right.
Because
if it were $3 trillion, I'd have a different opinion.
Ultimately, we are sovereign over the government. So in other words, the government is our responsibility. That's what it means to be sovereign. Okay.
Are you following?
If you look at a king, yeah, I get what you're saying, but I'm also looking at this. Okay, if we had a king that was sovereign over the people, that king is responsible for those people.
No, I understand your argument, Mike. That's not the question. And the reason why I'm asking you, Jan, you're not a political junkie in the way that, say, Mike and I am. And you're not a numbers math person like I am in terms of politics. So different aspects. So that's why you and I are going back and forth, Mike. But that's why I'm asking Jan for her opinion, because that's closer to the average person in America who isn't looking at it in the same way, where it's not political and talking about political agendas, which is where I look at it from, or looking at it from the principle, which is where you're coming from, Mike. How do you see it, Jan?
I understand both of your views on it, because, I mean, boss, from your point of view, I can understand why, it's not so much the principle. But the government is hurting the American people in so many ways that we need to hold them accountable to the principle, which is the Constitution. And if that means that everybody's got to give up $1 to make this right, then give up the damn dollar to make it right. Because bottom line, we have to hold our government to the Constitution. If they're breaking the Constitution, we're the ones that are going to suffer, because we're the ones who put them in office. Whether, like user said, well, they lie all the time. They'll tell you they're running on this, and then they turn around and do something else. They still got voted in.
No, I agree with that. And when we're talking about small numbers, what's relatively small numbers for our government, hundreds of millions of dollars. Yeah, of course. The problem is when this is applied, and I'm understanding, and this is where it becomes more political, understanding that if we apply that in the same manner when it costs trillions of dollars, it's not the same thing. The principle then faces a very different hurdle. And that's the argument I was making. That's where my concern is. That doesn't apply to this case. That isn't what the Supreme Court was facing. So I don't understand, unless they're trying to set a precedent to prevent what I'm afraid of, which is when the impact is so negative, it is literally life-changing for our country. And I can think of several issues that are so significant that the repercussion is life-changing. Literally, it would break the country.
Right.
And that's where you have to become political.
Right. And I get that. And I think that's why one of the reasons why, these Friday roundtables are so important, and what the Liberty First Foundation and other constitutional groups out there, and looking at, anti-government sites, and depending on, I'm not for all anti-government sites, because some of them are just too extreme, but it's getting back to this country running the way it's supposed to be ran. I'm tired of them up there passing laws and making laws that continually suppress us, when this is our dang country. They're up there, they're supposed to be working for us, not telling us what to do and how to do it. Taking the water from farmers.
Right.
Ultimately, numbers aside, the more to the point is when are the American people going to stop being willing to be the whipping boy for the government's mistakes that we put them in? Yes, we are ultimately responsible, and we need to pay for the mistakes that our government puts in, because we're ultimately responsible for the government being there in the first place. But like user says, do we absolve them of responsibility? Absolutely not. It's like asking your child when they do something wrong, and then you have to discipline them, and the child, when they go through the discipline, does that wipe away the responsibility of the lesson? No. You have to come back with the idea that, all right, you made a mistake. This time it wasn't grievous, but next time it could kill you. So you need to learn the lesson from this. And the only way you can learn the lesson from this is to properly discipline them.
Yeah,
The government is like a child. We have to discipline them. It isn't enough to just fix their mistake. We have to discipline them.
I understand, but we have to apportion. The only argument, and the thing that I think, the reason why I think, and again, I haven't read the dissent or any of the agreement by the Supreme Court on this, but my thought would be they are looking to apportion the punishment so that it is survivable as a nation. And I think they're forward looking this, saying, no, not this case, because this case, it's not a problem. We can put the punishment out there and everyone can absorb it. It's not a material factor. But going forward, there may be, this is the precedent that says in the future, okay, how do we deal with that one? It's the next one that they're answering. I think that's what their reasoning is. They're looking to what happens next time, what happens in the next case or the next issue that has already happened, and now punishment has to be apportioned. I think that's why they did that reversal, not because they're saying we just have to throw this out the window, we're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It's more, we've got to protect everything because we're going to self-destruct.
This case is just a compounding of a number of other issues, though. It's one of many things that is slowly putting lacerations on the backs of the American people, and so far the guys holding the lash have not been held accountable
by 1,000 cuts.
Yeah, we do need to put some punishment out there, absolutely. But what's the punishment? I mean, it's not the money. The money's not the issue in this case.
No, but what it is the lack of care that the government is taking for the will of the people.
Because the will of the people don't care. That's the ultimate problem.
But
which is also a problem of culture.
And
it's a culture that's been cultivated by authoritarians.
But here's the thing. In this ruling against the U.S. trustee, in this ruling, they literally said, yeah, you made a mistake, but we're not going to hold you accountable for it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that's literally what they said.
Again, my understanding, again, I haven't read it. My understanding, the only way that it makes sense is they're looking towards future cases to future-proof the precedent because of the potential negative consequence and context that I don't necessarily agree with, because I do believe there should be some punishment out there. My thought is the future proofing has to make it proportionate so that we don't crush ourselves in trying to fix the problem. It's a difficult tightrope. It's difficult because
it is. It's full of nuance, but you got to make the thing of it is, though, is that ultimately for the last several decades, there has been no deterrence from the people towards our own government to not create mistakes in bad law.
Well, ultimately, that's the biggest problem is, but how do you get that? You can't legislate people to pay attention to their politicians.
One of the biggest drivers of change is pain.
Huh?
One of the biggest drivers of change is pain. Until the American people start to feel pain, they will not do anything to change their government.
And that's the same goes for the government. Unless you make the government feel pain, so strip back some of their wages. Which employee in the history of economics has ever been able to give themselves a raise? None. Not in any kind of democratic situation ever.
Oh, you're talking about governments giving the Congress raising its yeah, that's not so much the problem.
No, but it is a problem because the way this works is they're still getting money regardless of what they do, because they're able to assume that all the public money that's coming in, a portion of that is going to go towards their salaries. So if the American people go to their representatives and they're like, you know what, we're going to renegotiate this. We're going to send people to the government to scale back all of that money that was being sent in for your salaries. You don't get that anymore. We're going to pick people to go there that are going to be going there for the deliberate focus of scaling back what politicians get paid as their career. That would be one way to do it. Whether it happens or not depends on how much pain the people are feeling. The people have got to be able to produce the representatives that are going to go there and actually take the system back to where it belongs.
I understand. And the problem with that, and I'm dealing with the realistic political impact of this. It's not that I disagree with you guys on the principle. I understand the principle. I agree with the principle. Here's the problem. America has so many peoples. We're all at different levels. It's the reason why we haven't had a revolution yet. This is the reason why civil war is kind of possible in the near term, but not the way that most people think of it as.
No, it'd be more like
because everyone's feeling the problems, everyone is feeling the issues, everyone is looking at the answers at different levels, at different directions. Because this one group may be over the boiling point, but there's a bunch of other groups that are nowhere even close to simmering on these issues. Another group that's somewhere room temperature on these issues. They're all over the place. So you get the Civil War, you get the pain, you get the change in government when you have enough people, regardless of which group they are, all at the same boiling point at the same time, which
Correct.
is virtually impossible. And we see this in other countries on a regular basis, which is why they have coups, they have civil wars, they have changes of government. Again, look at what just happened in France. You know, they just went center right because the people got fed up with the far left progressives. And they said, okay, we're done with that now, or at least for the time being. We have too many diverse groups. And when I say diverse, I'm not talking about color and that stupidity. I mean, we have different groups in the nation at all different levels in terms of expectations, in terms of pain that they're suffering, everything. And that's why we're not seeing it.
Right. What you would actually see is something more akin to localized insurgencies where different ideological groups would be going at one another based on.
And we are seeing that.
Right. But it's not going to be 1860 where you have people lining up at battlefields all over the United States and you're having major engagements. It's going to be localized, almost like gang warfare.
Yes.
Localized gang warfare is basically the best image that you can put it out. And we're already seeing it.
Yeah, we're seeing it. Antifa, Proud Boys, conflicts in Washington.
Yeah,
autonomous
localized urban conflicts, probably on a bigger scale, but it's going to be mostly in cities. It's going to be mostly within factions within those cities or influencing those cities. That's what we're looking at.
You're going to have fighting on one street while you're still going to be able to go to McDonald's 2 blocks over and get a sandwich. Essentially is what's going to happen. And to User's point, so most congressmen may not write the bills, but most people can write bills.
Right.
The average citizen can put forth legislation. It's just a matter of finding somebody to bring it to the floor.
Right.
That's
a big part of it.
When Afghanistan happened and they had the whole travesty of the Afghanistan retreat, I put forward a case to Tenney, who was my representative at the time. I said, you need to bring this to the floor. Biden is ultimately responsible as the commander-in-chief for this travesty of Afghanistan and the abandonment of Americans within the country. He gave material, he gave money, he has committed treason, and he's given comfort to the enemy. He needs to be, at the very least, investigated and impeached. At the very most, he needs to be criminally referred to the Senate. They have to hold the trial, impeach him, and then take him to court. Punish him. It never made the floor. You have to find these representatives that are willing to listen to their constituents and bring those pieces of legislation that you write and take it to the floor for you. That's the people's house. That's not the DC district's house. That's why we can write legislation and send it to Washington and have it heard. But you have to have representatives that are willing to do that. And we don't right now. And we don't have a culture right now that knows enough to realize that we are the ones that are supposed to be writing the legislation and passing it up the chain to our representatives, who then bring it to the House. And that's why groups like ours are so important, because that type of education comes from us.
So that's what I was going to know, is ultimately the whole problem and the solution, and more importantly, the solution to the problem is knowledge. Knowledge and action. First comes the knowledge, second comes the action. People have to understand the principle that's involved, that we are ultimately we are responsible, and we have to act. And if we understand that, we understand our responsibilities, we understand that it lies on us, not some other group, not government, but which is amorphous, but literally each and every one of us are a part of that, both in terms of the punishment, the benefits, the rewards, everything. It's all on us. We understand that, which then leads to taking the action of electing better people who are more responsive, people who are more accountable. And then it filters through the system from there. That's where the pain to the government comes in.
Right.
But it all starts with knowledge. And that's the biggest problem right now, which is why the Supreme Court is making, in this case, a very awkward decision, because knowledge is missing. The core of this is the problem, which is the core problem is knowledge.
That I agree. And with that, okay, we are pushing 2 hours, so I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping things up. We did have one other topic, but we're going to touch on that next week instead of this week. Because we are, like I said, over our 2 hour mark. Education is key. Okay. I don't care if you choose to be involved with politics or not. Politics will involve you in one way, shape, or form. You pay taxes, you're involved in politics. You drive a car, you're involved in politics. You own a home, you're involved with politics. You pay rent, you're involved with politics. I don't care what level you are at. I don't care how well you don't want to be, how much you don't want to be involved with politics. You are involved. The only way you can be not involved with politics is become a hermit out in the middle of the ocean on some deserted island with nobody around and become completely self-sufficient. Otherwise, you're involved with politics.
Even if you're dead, because the dead vote in New York.
They do.
It's
And
so
in other
freaking
states. So, the biggest thing that nobody can take away from you is knowledge. Okay? However, you must be responsible for gaining that knowledge. We can only go through this stuff so much. Okay? We will advise you as much as we can. We will help educate as much as we can. But ultimately, the responsibility for your knowledge and your education is upon yourself. It's not on anybody else. Do your research. Okay? Every bill that's coming up before Congress, before your state legislature, whatever, is available for you to research. Attend town council meetings, your county legislative meetings. They're open to the public. Okay, unless it's a closed door session, they are open to the public.
And many times they'll be
And
surprised you show up.
learn. Okay. I went to a town council meeting and I was there to do a presentation and there was nobody there. There was nobody there except for the town council. Okay. Get involved, people. This is your government. It's my government because I need to be involved with it. But it's also yours. Okay. Until you're involved in the government, we do not have a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. If you want to learn, please get involved with some constitutional thinking organization. Okay, Liberty First Foundation, Cato Institute, 10th Amendment Center. And there's many, many others that are available. Heritage Foundation, Hillsdale College, and I mean, the list goes on and on. Learn. Teach yourself about the history of this country. Because what we are seeing happening today has already happened in one form or another. Okay? Those who do not learn from history are destined to repeat it. And that's what we are seeing today. Get involved. Because the only path to change is through us. It's not going to happen from the government. It's going to happen by the people. It's what
Like in Argentina.
Country, and that's what will save this country.
Mm-hmm.
I want to thank everybody who's in the audience tonight, all the comments and everything. User, thank you very much for your input and your insight. This is much appreciated. Dahl, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure.
For your input with the 16th Amendment and other topics that we had tonight. It was very well thought out. Michael, as always, thank you for always being on the show and being a part of the regulars that are on here every week. Jan, thank you for keeping us on track and keeping us moving forward with our topics. I know we can get off in the weeds very often, as we often do. So it does help us get through more topics by you basically being our timer. And also, I do appreciate your input and insight into things, looking at stuff from a different perspective. I tend to look at things from a constitutional viewpoint. Michael looks at them from a political standpoint. Neither one of those are wrong. Neither one of are absolutely right. But honestly, we need to get our country back to its constitutional roots, back to its constitutional foundation.
Absolutely.
Because that's what this country was built on, is built upon we the people.
Culturally, too. Culturally and politically.
Yes. Okay, so again, thank you, everybody. Please like, share, comment, and help us get the word out. Okay, you can also find us at l1f.us. There you become a member. If you want to help support us, do become a paid member. That helps us pay for stuff like these live streams, helps us pay for our websites. It also helps us pay for some of the outreach that we do, trying to educate people across the country. But without your help, we can't do this. Plain and simple. It's very expensive what we do, and we need all the help that we can get. We are here every Friday night, 7 p.m. Every Friday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you, and we will see you next week.